The rumor began as a whisper on the edge of mapped space. Ships in the Reach carried the tale like a tide. Traders told it in low voices in dark ports. Pirates laughed at it while they polished their weapons, drew the strange faces on scrap paper and called them legends. For the story meant little. They had ruled the outer lanes for generations. They had clay forts on 10 moons and iron in every hull. They had pushed back storms and rivals and made their law the only law for 100 systems. To their commanders, the human tale was a small, curious thing, like a moth burned at a lantern. On the listening post called Spire 9 there was no laughter. The outpost sat on a rock where the light from 3 suns strayed thin and weak. It was a place of long nights and long lists of names. Men and women at Spire 9 checked the same numbers each watch, logged the same blips, and kept the same careful watch for ships that did not belong. The post had one rule: do not let anything pass unnoticed. Cora, a young technician, ran her hand along the cold console as she watched the feed. Her species loved numbers and shapes, but sometimes the numbers surprised them. There are patterns in the dark, she thought, and then there are things that look like patterns but are not. The screen pinched and a strange signature bloomed. It had a shape she had only seen in the oldest maps, a trace of something like a hull but layered in a way that did not fit any design in their catalogs. A senior officer at Spire 9 frowned. He was an older with gray-fed beard plates, and he had spent his life reminding younger crews that fear was a weakness. He stepped close and read the readout. "This is not a known class," he said, the words flat as stone. He sent a probe, and the probe sent back data that made everyone at the post sit a little. There were weapon signatures, yes, old ones and powerful ones. And there was a faint signal that matched stories in a way did not like. "Human?" he asked. Cora shrugged. "Stories are stories. We have better things to worry about." But the post kept watching. The signature matched a speed only rarely used. It moved with the grace of a hunted thing. It did not act like an enemy fleet. It moved like a ghost. Far from Spire 9, in the lanes where cargo and faith and hunger moved, a convoy of small civilian vessels drifted. They carried seeds and spare filters, old songs and new bobbies. They did not have shields meant for war. The convoy relied on escorts for safety, and that was why Horizon Vanguard glided on the far side of the convoy like a patient sea hunter. Captain Laura King stood in the bridge of the Vanguard. She was young for her rank, but she had earned it by staying cool where others climbed the rail. Her hair was short, and she had a scar along her left eyebrow that showed from a fight years before, on a run where a small light freighter had died and her crew had saved its last child. She did not like legends. She liked maps and routes, and the exact way the thrusters sang when they warmed. She liked numbers and men, and the morning cup brewed on the small galley. The Vanguard was a medium battleship with a crew who trusted it as one trusts a large, honest animal. It had armor and engines meant to keep people safe long enough for help to arrive. The ship carried Laura's voice, low and steady, and the crew obeyed because her orders came with reason. "Approach pattern steady," said Daniel Brooks, the navigator, a man with a careful face and hands that fit the controls like a seam. "Convoy holds. No contacts other than the usual traffic." "Hold formation," Laura replied. "Maintain signal and run close sweeps. I want eyes on every blind spot." From a window of the bridge, Laura could see the thin line of the convoy moving through the black. The stars were not bright here. Clouds of dust and drift threw sparks when the light hit them. It was the kind of place where stories began because it was quiet enough for small lies to grow tall. In the lanes, a raiding squad noticed this convoy. They had made a living from such runs. The squad called themselves the Red Claw, and they loved the quick taste of prizes. For them, the convoy was a chance for plunder. Their captain smiled when he saw the slow ships on his viewer. "Easy prey," he told his crew. They broke formation and sped to intercept. They did not expect the Horizon Vanguard. From the viewpoint, the Vanguard did not look like a ghost in the beginning. It looked like a hunter with bright teeth. Its hull threw off light in angles that made the raiders' sensors twitch. There was a hum around it that did not match the models in their books. When Captain's squad dropped into attack, they thought of coin and celebration, not of danger. The first move the Vanguard made was simple. It pushed a flare of electromagnetic interference into space that blinded the raiders' long sensors. Sensors are faith for many ships. Without them, crews feel as if their hands were cut. The Red Claw's attack blinked and died like a small fire in rain. Horizon Vanguard edged forward and opened its guns. They were not the largest guns in the fleet, but they were accurate and they made sound like a bell. The first volley cut a raider's engine and sent it tumbling in a polite arc. The second salvo folded a wing and turned a cruiser into little speechless metal. Captain felt his chest tighten in a way he had not expected. He called for retreat, but retreating in the face of the Vanguard felt wrong, like stepping into a trap of words. The raiders had led themselves into a storm they had not understood. From the bridge of the Vanguard, Laura watched the raiders break and crumble. Her crew worked like a single mind, hands and eyes moving in quiet harmony. They wore no eagerness. They had a coolness that came from knowing what to do. When it was over, a few broken ships drifted on the edge of the convoy, and the Vanguard hummed with activity as medical teams pushed out and engineers checked hulls. The survivors carried the story of the fight like a new fever. The Red Claw had met not a convoy escort, they said, but a shade that rose from old maps. Their sensors, the survivors told their leaders, had been deceived by something that knew tricks older than the Dominion. The men who had once laughed at human stories now found their laughter cold. At Spire 9, the logs filled with talk, ordered a sweep and gathered his officers. The name humans had lost meaning among most, but for a few like the old story came back, not as the sweet thing told to children, but as a warning. They had stories of wars long gone, where humans had been the strongest in the known map. Those tales said humans burned whole fleets and left fields of silent moons. The historians had called them myths to calm the nervous. But now the instruments whispered things that matched the myths. Back with the convoy, a small boy named Eli clung to his mother's hand, as the Vanguard's med team fixed a torn bulkhead in the nearest freighter. He had never seen a battleship close. All he knew of war came from old songs his grandmother hummed. In those songs, faces were strong and voices were loud. Eli looked at Captain Laura with wide eyes and wanted to know what a human was like when she spoke. Laura noticed him. She walked down the gangway and crouched so she could look him in the eyes. She had a way of speaking that was soft and clear, like a bell heard from far away. "We'll get you to your next stop safe," she told Eli. "Stay with your mother and stop starring too long. You might get the sky in your eyes." Eli laughed. He had a small scar on his knee and a stubborn face. "Do you know ghosts?" he asked. The question was childish but earnest. Laura touched his shoulder and shook her head. "We are not ghosts. We are people who have not given up." The boy's mother watched the exchange with a mixture of gratitude and fear. She had seen the fighters, and a small part of her thought the legends might be true. But now, a human had saved them. She folded her hands and prayed in a language that mixed old faith and new breath. Word spread across the nearby sectors like a slow spring flood. Traders took it aboard and filled their jars with the tale. The who had seen the Vanguard made careful choices with their words. Some hid the hum of fear behind pride. Others could not stop their hands from shaking. Rumors are clever. They morph to fit the listener. In a small bar on a moon that still kept its moonlight, a young called listened and drank and tried to measure truth between the lines. Had a mind that liked to fix things. He had been born among the rocky belts and his hands knew how to bend metal. In his memory, his father told him stories about the old way the stars had been. The human tales had a feeling then, a rhythm that made men listen. Would later tell the story differently. He would say he saw the Vanguard's hull with his own eyes and felt the air change. For now, he merely held a cup and watched the other patrons as they respoke the tale. Not everyone believed the stories. Some men in positions of power counted the numbers and shrugged. The council, a group of merchants and minor lords, argued that the Vanguard was an isolated case. "A skilled captain can do much with a single ship," one merchant said. "This does not mean humans have returned in force. We must not let fear tax our trade." Disagreed. He stepped into the council's chamber with his records and his worn voice. He said the signatures matched old charts in the forbidden libraries. He said that the tactics used by the vanguard were like the patterns of an era the Dominion had fought to forget. The chamber grew quiet, and a thought spread. The world could change in a day when a long-buried thing came back. On the vanguard, crews repaired what little damage had happened during the skirmish. The ship's cook, a man named, hummed while he swept the mess. He liked small tasks. They made him sure that something real existed. The lead engineer climbed into a tight maintenance tunnel and checked a conduit with an efficient motion. She had grown up on a repair yard near Earth, and she had a way of solving problems that made her the kind of person captains liked to keep close. She had seen odd signatures before, and she did not call them ghosts. She called them unknowns. "We did our job, Captain," said quietly in the engine room. "We kept them alive." Laura smiled without teeth. That is all anyone can ask. At night, after the convoy had moved on and their small fires smoldered in distant ports, the vanguard drifted alone among the stars. The crew looked out at the dark and thought of maps and numbers and the next leg. Their lives had a rhythm. They woke, they took watch, they ate, they fought if needed. The rumor they had made would travel. It would come back to them in new colors only later. Laura sat alone in the small observation deck. She allowed the weight of command to rest on her for a while. It did not crush her, but it made her aware of the smallness of things. The humming lights, the cup cooling on a panel, the soft breath of a ship that trusted its crew. She knew, as any captain must, that one battle does not end a war. She also knew that it causes ripples. On a far moon, a scholar named read the reports with trembling hands. He was an old man who had spent his life in the dust of old libraries. He had kept letters and maps of the age of humans like a gardener saves seeds, muttered as he turned the pages. The evidence made him feel two things at once, that he had been right to keep those things, and that the world would not forgive a return to war easily. When the first week passed, the rumor grew teeth. It attached new details to its bones. Men claimed the vanguard could move without waste. Some said it healed its own metal. Others believed it could vanish and strike from the dark. The children told the stories with stars in their eyes, shrinking enemies into monsters. The merchants told them when they wanted higher prices. The fighters told them to make slight changes in tactics and to show force. Back on the vanguard, the crew had a different truth. The ship was a machine and a home. The people aboard were tired and hungry for small comforts. They were not wraiths and they were not mythic beings. They were stubborn, patient, and dangerous when pressed. They had reason and a slow kind of courage. Laura walked the corridors and met eyes. She spoke with the med team, held the hand of a freighter captain who had lost cargo, and gave a soft word to a child who clung to his mother. She did not speak to the rumor. Rumors are not commands, they are wind. But the wind had a path, and that path led to the ears of those who did not like to be told they were weak. The Red Claw had failed. Their survivors returned with something that felt heavier than loss, a word that would make leaders plan and soldiers sharpen their claws. The vanguard had done something more than protect a convoy. It had drawn attention. The reach is wide and full of pockets and folds. A single spark can start a blaze, and an ember carried on the air can land in the wrong place. The rumor of humans moved like that ember. It landed in places both rich and poor. It separated men who needed hope from those who needed power. In the days that followed, the thought about old maps, about wars now folded in soft paper, and about the unknown ship that had smoked their raiders like small candles. They learned a new respect for the name humans. At the end of one long watch, Laura came to the bridge and watched the stars. She thought of the boy Eli and his small questions. She thought of the convoy and the way the vanguard had hummed when the guns had fired. She thought of the weight of command and the thin string that kept a ship and its crew whole. Somewhere in rooms of power, a decision began to shape. They might treat the event as a one-off, or they might seek the truth in force. Ships were built for both gentle hands and for war. Rumors were not always kind, and humans had a way of making their presence felt. The vanguard would go on its route, but the space it left behind was not the same. The map had shifted by a small, important amount. Captain Laura stood, not a ghost but a steady woman in a work-worn jacket, and she prepared for the next day. She did not know that her ship would be called a legend in the hours to come. She did not know that men would argue and plan and build in ways that would change the fate of many. She only knew that she had duty, and duty had to be met. Outside, beyond the thin glass and the hum of the ship, a small blinking on a distant sensor marked another thing on the edge of the map. It was there, patient and quiet, like a rumor itself, waiting for the world to decide what to do with the truth. And so the stars watched as the first chapter of a new story closed. The whisper had become a voice. The voice would find ears, and those ears would echo far and wide. What began as a single act of protection would become something greater and more dangerous than any of them imagined. The Dominion had never feared any species in living memory. Their ships filled the lanes of the Reach like iron snakes, and their banners hung over ports that once belonged to smaller, quieter civilizations. The Dominion had long believed that history bent to their will. If a rival rose, they crushed it. If a colony cried for help, they ignored it. If a rumor spread of an old power, they dismissed it. But after the Horizon Vanguard destroyed the Red Claw Raiders, the rumor could no longer be ignored. Something older than the Dominion had returned. Something the stories once described as fierce, stubborn, and impossible to break. The leaders did not need the word humans to know danger. They felt it in the silence of their scouts, in the gaps in their reports, and in the fear of their surviving raiders. When fear touched the Dominion, it did not ask for permission. It spread like cold smoke. In a tall chamber lit by pale lamps, the High Council of the gathered. Their armor shone, but their voices trembled beneath the metal. Commander, a hard-eyed veteran, slammed his fist against the table. One ship, one human ship, and you all act as if the stars have broken. We have crushed fleets twice their size. Do not let legends cloud your judgment. But Elder shook his head. He had lived longer than most of the council. It is not the size of their fleet that concerns me. It is the way they fought. Their tactics match the ancient charts. The humans did not learn to fight from us. We learned from them. A quiet fell over the room, even looked uneasy. Then we must respond, said. We must show strength before fear spreads among our people. Assemble a retaliation force. Drive them back before the rumor becomes fact. And so the Dominion prepared a fleet. On the other side of the Reach, the humans prepared too. Aboard the Iron Meridian, the flagship of the Earth forces, Admiral Jason Ward stood with his hands behind his back. The Meridian was a ship built with the calm confidence of a species that had survived extinction-level wars. It carried memories of Earth in its steel, mountains, oceans, lost cities, and the stubborn hope of humanity. Jason Ward was steady, tall, and seldom smiled. He had learned long ago that war stole smiles first. He watched the stars from the observation window and waited for reports. Admiral, we've confirmed another missing colony signal, said, stepping onto the bridge. Her uniform sleeves were rolled slightly, a habit she kept despite regulations. Epsilon Colony. Last signal was a distress code. No follow-up. Jason nodded. The Dominion is closing in. They want to test us before sending their main forces. He sighed softly. And they think we are myths. That can work for or against us. Daniel Brooks approached with a data pad. His voice was clear and calm. We tracked movements. There is a buildup in the Epsilon corridor. If they strike there, they will cut off our frontier routes. Jason studied the map. Dots blinked in repeating patterns. They want a trap, but they forget something. His eyes hardened. Humans do not walk into traps. We build exits. Crossed her arms. You mean we go in anyway? Jason gave her a slight nod. We go in with our eyes open. The Iron Meridian set its course for the corridor. The Epsilon Corridor was a narrow stretch of space known for magnetic storms and broken moons. Many captains avoided it unless necessary, but they chose it for ambushes because it offered good hiding places and few escape routes. When the Meridian arrived, the sensors lit up instantly. "Multiple signatures," Daniel said. "They are waiting for us." Jason Ward gave the order. "All stations ready, shields forward, maintain formation." The Dominion fleet struck first. Their ships burst from the shadow of a dead moon, firing plasma streams and kinetic slugs. The sky lit up like a violent sunrise. Human escorts spread out and returned fire with rail cannons that cut lines of fire through the darkness. The Iron Meridian stood at the center of the formation like a fortress. A Dominion cruiser swept across the Meridian's left side, firing relentlessly, braced as her station shook. "We need to divert more power to the ventral shields." "Do it," Jason said calmly, "and tell the 4th Squadron to aim for their stabilizers." The 4th Squadron obeyed with perfect timing. Their shots slammed into the Dominion cruiser's stabilizers, and the ship spun out of control, drifting like a wounded animal. For a moment, the Dominion ships faltered. But the fight was far from over. From the starboard flank, 3 emerged, each bristling with fighters that launched like angry sparks. "Fighter swarm incoming," Daniel warned. "Deploy counterswarm," Jason ordered. Human drones and fighters left the Meridian's bays in a smooth arc, meeting the fighters in a chaotic dance of explosions and streaking trails. The noise in the command deck grew louder, the lights flickered, felt the deck tilt slightly from the force of a glancing hit, but none of them panicked. Humans did not panic easily in battle. They adapted. The Meridian's gunners fired with cold focus. They aimed not for random destruction, but for the weak points. They had trained to read ship designs like old textbooks. A Dominion warship broke through the defensive line and charged straight toward the Meridian. "It's trying to ram us," Daniel said. Jason Ward nodded once. "Prepare for boarding." He tapped the comm. "Marine teams stand by." He looked at his officers. "Let them come." The Dominion ship slammed into the Meridian's hull with a grinding roar. Locking clamps seized, and boarding tubes pierced the hull like sharp teeth. The air vibrated, with the sound of metal being cut. On Deck 7, human Marines waited with weapons ready. Their helmets reflected the emergency lights. They stood still, not with fear but with discipline. When the Dominion soldiers broke through the final barrier, they rushed forward with growls and raised blades. The humans did not step back. Sergeant Cole raised his rifle and fired the first shot. After that, the corridor erupted into controlled bursts of human fire. The humans moved like a single line, covering each other, pushing the Dominion invaders back step by step. One warrior swung a heavy blade at. He ducked, pushed forward, and struck the warrior with the butt of his rifle. The creature fell, stunned. The Marines advanced. They drove the back into their own boarding tubes and sealed them with explosive charges. The impact shook the deck, and then there was silence. On the bridge, Daniel let out a long breath. "Boarding teams report success." Sat back in her chair. That was too close. Jason watched the tactical screen. "They want to see how far they can push us." He paused. "Now we show them." The Iron Meridian shifted its formation. Supporting vessels tightened their orbit around it. Guns aligned like teeth. "Target their command ship," Jason ordered. The Meridian fired its main cannon, a bright beam that cut through the field like a spear. The Dominion flagship shuddered, split open, and erupted in a blast of fire. The fleet broke. They fled in scattered paths, leaving wreckage behind. Daniel exhaled slowly. "Admiral, the corridor is secure." Checked her panel. "We have hull damage and several wounded, but systems are stable." Jason Ward nodded. "Good, help the wounded, prepare for repairs, and set a course for the nearest colony outpost. We cannot lose momentum now. The Meridian moved through the remains of the battle. Among the drifting debris were broken Dominion ships, torn fighters, and floating metal fragments that once held life. Human rescue teams launched from the Meridian to search for survivors. They brought home wounded humans and even a few injured who had been caught in escape pods. Humanity never left the wounded behind, not even enemies. Oversaw the repair crews. Her sleeves were dark with grease, her fingers tapping against each panel. She checked cracked conduits, damaged shields, and burned-out relays. "We can fix it," she said to herself each time, and she meant it. Jason Ward walked the corridors speaking to crew members. He listened. He reassured. He gave them a steady presence. Leadership was not loud for him. It was quiet, strong, unmoving. In the small, Daniel visited the wounded Marines. He watched as the medics worked with calm precision. A young Marine named Tyler gave him a tired smile. "We held the line, sir." Daniel smiled back. "Yes, you did more than that. You showed them who we are." Outside the ship, the stars were calm again. The battle was over, but the war had just begun. Across the Reach, the Dominion braced for the truth. They had struck at humans, and humans had struck back twice as hard. The Dominion High Council gathered again. Their anger burned brighter this time. Commander slammed his hand on the table once more. "This is no small matter. We thought the myths exaggerated. We were wrong. Humans are not ghosts. They are soldiers, and they are far stronger than our scouts claimed." A general stepped forward. "Then what do you suggest?" Growled, his voice deep. "War, full war. We must end them before they gather more allies." But Elder raised a hand. "War is not a choice anymore. It has already begun." He stared at the map with heavy eyes. "We attacked them. They survived. We cornered them. They broke our trap. We sent our best ships. They tore them apart." A silence spread again. Finally, spoke the words that would shape the next phase of the conflict. "If we are to survive," he said, "we must destroy Earth's main forces before they bring their greatest weapons. We must launch an invasion." The council hesitated. "Their weapons are old myths," one council member whispered, though her eyes betrayed doubt. Did not blink. Myths often hide truth. If humans truly possess the legendary battleships described in ancient records, then the Dominion is standing at the edge of disaster. Leaned forward. "Then we must strike now, before those battleships arrive." A single flare of fear passed over the council. The next day, warships began to gather. The Dominion sent calls to distant units. They armed their fleets. They sharpened their claws and prepared to face an enemy they had once believed extinct. Meanwhile, the Iron Meridian traveled toward human space, carrying the weight of a new war. Jason Ward met with his officers in the strategy room. "The Dominion will not stop now," he said. "We hurt them, and fear makes enemies reckless. They will come with more ships, more traps, and more fury." Looked at him with steady eyes. "Then we get ready." Daniel placed new star maps on the table. "We need reinforcements. If the Dominion launches a full invasion, we cannot face them with only the frontier fleet." Jason nodded. "We will call Earth Command. We will ask for the old guard." Paused. "You mean the Leviathan class?" Jason stared at the star map. "If the Dominion is preparing an invasion, then yes, we need Earth's deadliest battleships." Silence shook the room. The Leviathan-class ships were more than vessels. They were legends. Built in the last great war of humanity, they were said to carry enough firepower to split a moon. Daniel swallowed. "Do you think Command will deploy them?" "If they see what we're facing," Jason said softly, "they will have no choice." While the humans planned, the Dominion gathered its fleets into a storm. They tightened their claws. They sharpened their blades. They prepared their engines for a march across the stars. The war no longer hid in rumors. It was real. And both sides knew the next battle would decide far more than a convoy or a corridor. It would decide who ruled the Reach. It would decide whether humans were truly legends, or the most dangerous power the galaxy had forgotten. The Dominion prepared for war with a level of fear they had not known in generations. Their fleets gathered near the Divide, dozens of warships forming lines like walls of iron. Commanders shouted orders, crews sharpened weapons, and entire moons were turned into supply stations. The Dominion wanted to crush the humans before they could answer the challenge. They believed that if they struck fast and hard, the humans would retreat into old shadows. But humans were not shadows, they were survivors. On the edge of human space, the Iron Meridian traveled with a damaged hull but an unbroken spirit. Admiral Jason Ward knew the next days would decide the future of the Reach. His officers stood with him in the strategy room as he contacted Earth Command. The screen flickered, and a calm voice filled the room. "Admiral Ward, we have reviewed your report. The Dominion fleet is larger than expected. Their intent is clear. We cannot risk losing this frontier. Reinforcements are on the way." Jason straightened. "What reinforcements? Our frontier ships are already stretched thin." There was a short pause. "Earth is sending the Leviathan-class battleships. They will arrive through the main jump corridor within the next cycle. Prepare to receive them." The screen faded. Exhaled slowly. "So it is true, they are deploying them." Daniel Brooks leaned on the edge of the table. "I never thought I would see a Leviathan-class ship. I thought they were kept only for the darkest wars." Jason nodded. "This is one of those wars now." He looked at the star map. "The Dominion will strike before the Leviathans arrive. They want to break us early. We must hold until reinforcements get here." Studied the map with steady eyes. "We will manage, we always do." Jason Ward gave the order. "Prepare every ship, every pilot, every gun. We meet the Dominion even if it costs us everything." The battle began sooner than expected. The Dominion launched their invasion before the sunrise cycle. Their ships came in waves, heavy cruisers, sharp-winged fighters, and armored carriers. They moved with the confidence of a force that believed it could not lose. Inside the Iron Meridian, the alarm rang across every deck. Jason Ward's voice echoed through the ship. "All hands to battle stations. This is not a drill." Rushed to engineering, her sleeves already rolled up. Sparks flew from a faulty conduit as she passed, but she ignored it. She grabbed her tools, shouted orders, and her team moved like a well-trained machine. Daniel took his position at navigation. The display showed red signatures spreading across the field like ink. "Admiral, they are targeting our center. They want to break our formation." "We hold the line," Jason said. "Signal the escorts, stay close to the meridian, do not spread thin." The first blast shook the human fleet. 2 ships went down in the opening strikes. The sky lit up with fire and shrapnel. The Meridian fired its main guns in slow, powerful bursts that tore corridors of light through the enemy lines. Human fighters launched to meet the Dominion swarm. In the chaos, the sound of engines, alarms, and distant explosions echoed through every deck. On the starboard side, a human frigate exploded. The blast rocked the Meridian's right flank. Daniel kept his voice steady. "Admiral, we must shift the formation. We are exposed on the right." Jason nodded. "Do it. Move the Vanguard into position." The Horizon Vanguard responded at once. Captain Laura King guided her battleship through the firestorm. Her crew moved with silent discipline. The Vanguard fired a stream of high-precision shots that cut down the Dominion fighters trying to breach the Meridian's shields. "Hold your angles," Laura ordered. "Protect the flank. Our people are counting on us." The Dominion ships pushed harder. There, the Blood Serpent advanced with enough firepower to tear small moons apart. Its cannons glowed hot as it charged toward the Meridian's front. Shouted through the comm, "Admiral, the Serpent is powering its main weapon. If it fires, our shields won't hold." Jason's jaw tightened. Then we stop it before it fires. He tapped his command panel. Vanguard, this is Meridian. Prepare for direct intercept. Laura King understood instantly. We will handle it. The Horizon Vanguard surged forward, placing itself between the Blood Serpent and the Iron Meridian. Daniel turned toward Jason. Captain King is risking everything. Jason answered quietly. She knows what is at stake. The Blood Serpent unleashed a blast. The Vanguard's shields held for only a moment before the weapon tore through them, shaking the entire ship. Laura gripped the railing as sparks rained from the ceiling. Return fire, all cannons. The Vanguard fired again and again, hitting the Serpent's ventral armor. Smoke and debris exploded from its hull. But the Serpent kept coming. On the Meridian, shouted from engineering, we need more power on the Vanguard's support beams. If they fall, the ship will crack apart. Jason responded, reroute everything you can. Worked with fierce focus, her hands moving fast over controls. Lights flickered, alarms blared, but she kept going. In the chaos of battle, a human pilot team broke through the Dominion line. They launched torpedoes at the Serpent's weak points. The explosions tore open the Serpent's lower hull. Captain Laura King seized the moment. All guns now. The Vanguard fired a final volley. The Blood Serpent cracked open like a shattered shell and exploded in a burst of fire that lit the battlefield. The human crews cheered for a heartbeat. Then the real storm began. A massive ripple traveled through space. The stars themselves seemed to bend. Daniel stared at the sensors. Admiral, something is coming through the jump corridor, several massive signatures. Jason whispered the words he had been waiting for. They're here. A group of enormous shapes emerged from the corridor. The Leviathan-class battleships. The first was the Titan Lance. The second was the Atlas Crown. And behind them came more support ships, each one larger and stronger than any vessel in the Dominion fleet. The Titan Lance moved like a slow mountain, its hull glowing with old power. The Atlas Crown followed with calm, crushing force. Their engines left trails of white light across the void. When the Dominion commanders saw them, fear crawled through their ranks. One captain whispered, "This cannot be real, they were only myths." But the truth hung in the sky. The deadliest battleships built by humans had arrived. Admiral Jason Ward opened a channel to the Leviathan flagship. "This is the Iron Meridian. We welcome you to the front." A calm voice answered from the Titan Lance. "Admiral Ward, we see the situation. We will engage immediately." The Leviathans moved into formation. Jason gave the order. "All ships advance with them. The Dominion will fall today." The Titan Lance fired first. Its main gun unleashed a beam so bright that the entire field lit up. A Dominion cruiser vanished instantly, turned to dust. The Atlas Crown followed with a wave of rail fire that split an enemy carrier in half. The Dominion fleet panicked. Their lines broke. Their formations collapsed. Humans pushed forward. The Leviathans tore through the enemy ships like blades through thin metal. The Iron Meridian and Horizon Vanguard flanked them, picking off the stragglers. The Dominion forces tried to retreat, but the humans blocked every path. A final explosion marked the destruction of the last Dominion. When the dust settled, the battlefield was silent. The fleet was gone. Human ships drifted among the wreckage, tired but victorious. On the Meridian Bridge, Daniel leaned back in his seat. "It's over." Wiped sweat from her brow. "We held out long enough." Jason Ward nodded as he watched the Leviathans move slowly through the debris. The Dominion thought humans were legends. Now they know the truth. Across human space, the news spread fast. The great battleships were no longer myths. They were guardians. Warriors. Proof of what humanity had become. On a nearby colony moon, A child named Eli looked up at the sky as the battle reports came in. He tugged on his mother's sleeve. The humans won. His mother smiled softly. Yes, they protected us again. He stared at the stars, eyes full of hope. Then maybe humans are not ghosts. Maybe they are the strongest people in the whole galaxy. The war was not over, but the first great victory had been won. The Dominion learned a lesson they would never forget. Humans were not legends. They were real. And they were stronger than ever. The Reach would never be the same again. And the next chapter of the war had just begun.